You're standing in your kitchen. The argument ended 20 minutes ago, but your hands are still shaking. You know what they said. You heard it. The words are burned into your memory like a brand. But somehow, in the span of a single conversation, you've become the one apologizing, the one second-guessing, the one wondering if your own ears betrayed you. There's a specific quality to this confusion. It's not the normal fog of miscommunication. It's architectural, deliberate, a maze built in real time around your perception of reality itself. And here's what you haven't seen yet. It's always the same maze. Gaslighters, for all their psychological sophistication, are running a script. A predictable, mechanical, almost boring script. They use the same 3 phrases and slight variations to bend your reality into shapes that serve them. The reason it works is not because the script is clever. It works because you don't know you're watching a performance. Psychoanalytic theory reveals the mechanism. Gaslighting is a projective defense weaponized. The gaslighter cannot tolerate their own shame, rage, or inadequacy, so they externalize it onto you. They make you the container for everything they cannot face in themselves, and they do it with such conviction that you begin to believe the role they've cast you in. As Sigmund Freud observed, before you diagnose yourself with depression or low self-esteem, first make sure you are not, in fact, surrounded by assholes. In the next 20 minutes, we will not learn to cope with gaslighting. We will learn to see the script, to recognize the 3 core phrases that expose the entire game, and most importantly, to dismantle their reality distortion field with a precision that leaves no room for confusion. By the end, you won't need to argue. You'll simply know. Let's establish what gaslighting actually is. It is not lying. It is not disagreement. It is not someone remembering events differently than you do. Gaslighting is the systematic erosion of your confidence in your own perception. It is a psychological warfare tactic that makes you doubt the evidence of your own senses, your own memory, your own judgment. The goal is not to win an argument. The goal is to make you stop trusting yourself so completely that you become dependent on the gaslighter's version of reality. In psychoanalytic terms, this is an assault on your reality testing function. Reality testing is your ego's ability to distinguish between internal experience and external fact. It's the mechanism that lets you say, yes, that happened, or no, I'm imagining this. It's the foundation of sanity itself. The gaslighter targets this foundation, and they do it with language that sounds reasonable, language that sounds like they're the calm one, the rational one, the one trying to help you see clearly. This is the trap's elegance. The phrases they use are designed to make you look like the problem, the unstable one, the overreactive one, the one whose perception cannot be trusted. And because these phrases trigger your deepest insecurities, your fear of being too much, too sensitive, too crazy, you collapse inward instead of standing firm. But here's the revolution. Their script only has 3 moves, 3 core phrases, repeated in endless variation, that form the entire architecture of their reality distortion. Once you see them, the maze becomes glass. The first phrase in the gaslighter's arsenal, "You're too sensitive," or its siblings, "You're overreacting. Why do you take everything so personally? You're so emotional." This phrase is the entry point, the first brick removed from your reality testing. Here's how it functions. You identify something they did that hurt you. You name it. You set a boundary. This is healthy ego functioning, the ability to recognize harm and protect yourself. Their response? To reframe your perception as a personality flaw. They don't address what they did. They redirect the conversation to what's wrong with you, your sensitivity, your emotionality, your inability to take a joke or let things go. In psychoanalytic terms, this is deflection through pathologization. They're making your emotional response the problem rather than their behavior. And here's the brutal efficiency of it. Emotions are subjective. They do vary from person to person. So when they say you're too sensitive, there's a sliver of doubt that hooks into you. Am I too sensitive? Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I'm the problem here. And just like that, the foundation cracks. The first manifestation of this phrase's power is self-silencing. You stop bringing up issues because you don't want to be too sensitive again. You begin to police your own perceptions before they even reach your lips. The gaslighter doesn't have to do the work anymore. You're doing it for them. The second manifestation is accumulated pain. All those unaddressed hurts don't disappear. They compound. They build pressure inside you until you eventually explode, and then the gaslighter can point to your explosion as proof that you are, in fact, unstable. It's a closed loop, a perfect trap. But here's what breaks it. Emotional responses are data. Your feelings are not random noise. They are your psyche's alert system. When something hurts, your emotions are telling you, this is a boundary violation. This is harm. Pay attention. The gaslighter wants you to believe your emotions are the problem. The truth? Your emotions are identifying the problem. The second phrase, that never happened. Or, I never said that. You're remembering it wrong. That's not what I meant. This is the nuclear option. The direct assault on your memory itself. Or the first phrase attacks your emotional validity. This one attacks objective reality. Here's the mechanism. You confront them with something specific. A promise broken. A cruel comment made. An action taken. You have the receipts. Not necessarily written evidence, but the clear, vivid memory of what occurred. Their response? Flat denial. Not an excuse, not a justification, simply that reality does not exist. In psychoanalytic theory, this is where we see the gaslighter's own splitting defense in action. They cannot hold a contradictory image of themselves as both good person and person who did harmful thing. So they erase the harmful thing from reality entirely. But they're not just erasing it for themselves. They're attempting to erase it for you. And here's why it works. Memory is vulnerable. Memory is reconstructive, not photographic. We fill in gaps. We're influenced by emotion, by repetition, by suggestion. When someone confidently denies something you remember, it creates cognitive dissonance. Your brain starts searching for ways to resolve the contradiction. Maybe I misheard. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought. This is the erosion in real time. The first consequence is documentary behavior. You start taking screenshots, recording conversations, writing down what happened immediately after it happens. You become a detective in your own life, gathering evidence to prove to yourself that you're not insane. This is not paranoia. This is your psyche fighting to survive the reality distortion. The second consequence is memory doubt. Even when you know something happened, their denial plants a seed. Over time, you begin to question everything. Did that conversation happen the way I remember? Did I imagine the tone in their voice? Am I making things up? Your reality testing function is under siege. But here's the truth they're terrified you'll realize. Their denial is an admission. When someone flatly denies something that clearly happened, they're not correcting a misunderstanding. They're revealing that preserving their self-image is more important than your sanity. That's not love. That's not partnership. That's predation. The third phrase, "You're crazy," or "You need help. You're being psycho. Are you okay? You sound unstable." This is the kill shot. The phrase that moves beyond invalidation into wholesale psychiatric delegitimization. Here's how it functions. After weeks, months, sometimes years of the first two phrases eroding your confidence, you finally break. You raise your voice. You cry uncontrollably. You show the accumulated damage of being gaslit. And they point to your breakdown as proof that you are the problem. In psychoanalytic terms, this is reactive abuse framed as primary pathology. They drove you to the edge. They pushed and pushed until you shattered. And now they're using your shattered state as evidence that you were broken all along. This phrase is particularly insidious because it taps into a primal fear, the fear of being genuinely mentally ill. We all have moments of doubt about our own stability. We all wonder, in dark moments, if we're losing touch with reality. The gaslighter weaponizes this universal anxiety. When they say you're crazy, they're not making a clinical diagnosis. They're making a social declaration. They're attempting to position themselves as the sane, stable one, and you as the unreliable, mentally unstable one. If they can make this stick, if they can get you to believe it, or get others around you to believe it, then everything you say can be dismissed. Every boundary you set can be pathologized. Every truth you speak can be reframed as delusion. You become narratively powerless. The first manifestation of this phrase is self-pathologization. You start wondering if you are crazy. You Google, "Am I a narcissist?" You take online mental health screenings. You consider therapy not to heal from their abuse, but to fix whatever is wrong with you. The second manifestation is isolation. You stop talking to friends and family about what's happening because you're afraid they'll agree with the gaslighter. You're afraid they'll see you the way the gaslighter says you are, unstable, dramatic, mentally ill. So you stay silent, and silence is the gaslighter's greatest ally. But here's what breaks the spell. Sanity is not the absence of emotional response to abuse. If someone is systematically undermining your reality, and you respond with distress, anger, or breakdown, that is not insanity. That is a healthy organism recognizing poison. The crazy thing would be to feel nothing. Now you see the script. 3 phrases, 3 moves, the entire game. You're too sensitive attacks your emotional validity. That never happened attacks your memory and perception. You're crazy attacks your fundamental sanity. Together, they form a complete reality distortion system. And here's what makes it so effective. They escalate in coordination with your resistance. When you first push back, you get, "You're too sensitive." If you persist, you get, "That never happened." If you still don't back down, if you dare to gather evidence or involve others, you get, "You're crazy." It's a graduated defense system designed to neutralize threats at the lowest possible level. Most people fold at the first phrase. They accept the too sensitive label and silence themselves. The gaslighter doesn't have to deploy the heavier weapons. But if you're someone who trusts yourself, who knows what you experienced, the gaslighter has to work harder. They have to deny reality itself. And if that doesn't work, they have to attack your sanity. In psychoanalytic terms, you're watching projection in its purest form. The gaslighter cannot tolerate their own shame, their own cruelty, their own dysfunction, so they make you the carrier of those traits. They project their instability onto you and call it yours. And the reason it works, the reason you absorb it, is because of identification. Deep down, you want to believe this person loves you. You want to believe they're acting in good faith. So when they say these things, part of you tries to make it make sense. Part of you tries to become the person they're describing, just to resolve the cognitive dissonance. This is the trap's final lock. You collaborate in your own reality distortion. But here's the key that opens everything. Recognition is immunity. Once you see the script, you can't unsee it. Once you recognize these three phrases for what they are, not reflections of truth, but weapons of control, they lose their power. You stop internalizing. You stop doubting. You stop twisting yourself into shapes to make their version of reality fit. You simply see the game. So what do you do when you hear these phrases? Not what you've been doing, not arguing, not gathering evidence, not trying to make them see what they're doing. You do something much simpler. You trust yourself and walk away. This is not about winning the argument. This is about refusing to play the game. When they say you're too sensitive, you don't defend your emotional response. You say, calmly, I've told you how I feel. What you do with that information is your choice. And then you stop engaging. When they say, that never happened, you don't pull up screenshots or gather witnesses. You say, I know what I experienced. You can believe what you want. And then you stop engaging. When they say, you're crazy, you don't try to prove your sanity. You say, if that's what you believe, there's nothing more to discuss. And then you stop engaging. This is the move they're not prepared for. Indifference to their reality. Gaslighters need your participation. They need you to argue, to defend, to scramble for validation. Your desperation to be believed is the fuel that powers their entire system. When you remove that fuel, when you stop caring whether they believe you, the system collapses. Because here's what you finally understood. Their belief in your reality is irrelevant. You don't need their validation. You don't need their agreement. You don't need them to admit what they did. You only need to trust yourself. And once you do, once you stop seeking their approval of your own perception, you become untouchable. The gaslighter has one response left: escalation. They'll get louder, meaner, more desperate. They'll deploy flying monkeys, people who believe their version. They'll threaten to leave. They'll accuse you of being the real gaslighter. Let them. Because you know something they don't. You'd rather be alone and sane than partnered and crazy. This is not about revenge. This is not about making them pay. This is about reclaiming your mind. Their script is broken. Not because you beat them in an argument. Not because you proved them wrong. But because you stopped playing the game. You recognized the three phrases for what they are: tools of control, not statements of truth. You're too sensitive. No, you have feelings, and feelings are valid. That never happened. Yes, It did, and you trust your memory. You're crazy. No, you're having a sane response to insane treatment. Once you see this clearly, everything changes. You stop doubting yourself. You stop twisting yourself into shapes to earn their approval. You stop sacrificing your reality for the comfort of the relationship. You become solid again. And here's what nobody tells you about leaving gaslighting behind. The clarity is blinding. Once you're out, once you've reclaimed your perception, you'll look back and wonder how you ever doubted yourself. The script that seemed so convincing in the moment will look mechanical, obvious, almost laughably predictable. But you can't see it while you're in it. That's the entire design. So if you're watching this and recognizing these phrases in your life, listen carefully. Your reality is not up for debate. What you felt, you felt. What you saw, you saw. What you heard, you heard. The person trying to convince you otherwise is not protecting truth. They're protecting themselves. And you don't owe them your sanity as tribute. The game only works if you play. Stop playing.